Hello, and welcome to Back Through the Lens, where two film school friends talk about movies through the haze of nostalgia the good, the bad, and the ones that aren't quite how we remember them. I'm your host, Rachel, and with me is my co host, Joe. Today's topic is Disney animated movies during the Disney Renaissance period.
The period of Disney films, commonly referred to as Disney Renaissance, includes releases from 1989 to 1999. Being children of the mid-80s, the movies they released during these years were the movies that we grew up watching. Whatever you think about Disney, they were an inescapable part of the culture, and for us personally, an inescapable part of our childhood. This is our Disney Renaissance episode. So welcome to the episode.
Yeah. I actually hadn't heard the term Disney Renaissance before you suggested it as an episode topic.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's definitely when we were kids and basically before what is now called the Renaissance, like they were hitting slumps in the box office. And then Little Mermaid came around and they went back to more of their like musical style with Little Mermaid, like more like Broadway show tune stuff, sing-alongs, and out of the park. And they're like, well, let's do this for 10 years. And it worked.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of it that way because I'm used to Disney having a lot of songs in it.
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's funny because I tend to categorize Disney movies, especially when I'm deciding what to watch with my son, as movies that came out when I was little, when my mom was little, or I guess current generation Disney movies where my son is still little and they're coming out. Um, he's very much into Encanto and Frozen and kind of the newer wave of Disney movies. Um, he thinks it's really fun that he can watch movies that came out when I was little or when his Gigi was little.
Of course.
Um, I'd say if he was picking a Disney Renaissance, it would probably be The Lion King.
Yeah, that was a close pick for me. I know we usually do like alternate picks at the end, but since we're name dropping it, that was a close one. And I honestly, not knowing what you would pick, also thought you might have were gonna pick that one, just because it seems like everybody our age loves Lion King.
So I'm actually the outlier where
Oh,
I did not love The Lion King.
oh no,
It's fine.
it's Hamlet,
Yeah, it is Hamlet,
but that's
which I
okay.
don't know if any of us was aware of when we were kids.
No, not when I was whatever the age I was at the time. I'm sure not. No, but it was probably after an English lit class. I was like, this story sounds really familiar. What if it was with lions? Oh God.
I
So
still remember explaining the story of the Lion King to my grandparents, and when I got to the part about Scar killing his brother, my grandma was like, "This is a Disney movie?"
yeah,
And I always think of that when I someone brings up the Lion King because she was so horrified, and
yeah.
then now I can be like, "No, it's Shakespeare, actually."
There's a lot of death in Disney in general,
Yes,
especially parents, which I think we've already touched on in previous episodes.
I'm sure. I think that's been discussed a lot, but also watching Disney movies with my young son, um, they kind of introduced him to the concept of death and the concept that your parents could actually die,
Hmm.
which was not really what I was hoping to discuss when, we were stuck inside during the pandemic and watching a bunch of movies on Disney Plus.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oof.
yeah, so that was definitely one of those moments where things hit so much differently when you're a parent.
Hmm.
I don't remember having such a, existential crisis when I was a kid watching these movies, even though you're right, there's always a parent or two missing. Um,
Or two.
but my son really latched onto this and was kind of like, "Where's everyone's parents? What do you mean parents died? Could you die? Are you gonna die?" So that was not the best. It might be a little different too based on what you watch because in some of the movies, it's a bigger plot point that the parent or parents are gone. Like obviously something like The Lion King, but something like Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast or The Little Mermaid, there are no moms, but I don't think it's necessarily like important. It just is what it is,
Yeah, they don't talk about it much.
right? All right. Well,
So,
we can get into this then. So my pick for Disney Renaissance was Hercules, directed by John Musker and Ron Clements, released on June 13th, 1997, rated G, based on Heracles, the Greek mythological hero. So I had some conflicting information with this. Some sources I looked at said that Heracles is the Roman spelling, but
mm,
then other things said Hercules was the Romanized version, so I don't know.
yeah, I saw
But
that too.
we are not a mythology or a classics podcast, so we're just going to let that be.
Yeah, I've always known it as Hercules, not just this film, just the
Mhm.
stories of Hercules.
It's funny because I also grew up with reading a lot of like Greek and Roman and Egyptian mythology with my
Yeah.
grandma, and which is part of why this is my pick. So, in case you don't know, the Disney movie Hercules is based on Hercules being the son of Zeus, the most powerful god in ancient Greece. But Hercules is kidnapped as a baby and becomes mortal, so he's unable to live on Mount Olympus with his parents. For the point of this movie, his parents are Zeus and Hera. Hercules learns this background as a teenager and sets out to become a true hero so that he can reclaim his rightful place amongst the gods. Already some differences with the original, but we're going to ignore that.
Well, yeah, we're gonna. This is the very child-friendly version, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like I said, I would read this mythology all the time with my grandma growing up. Obviously, it was like slightly kid friendly. Sometimes not, though. She just
No.
really believed in it being like, this is the real stuff. Like, deal with it. Um, Disney, though, like I said, for the purposes of this movie, his parents are Zeus and Hera. I'm pretty sure I saw this in theaters. I would have been 12 at the time, about 12 when it came out. I feel like yearly Disney releases were still a pretty big thing. Maybe by the time Hercules came out, that was dying down a little bit because I personally don't think Hercules was as big of a release as something like, like Lion King or Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin. But I don't know. It was just such a thing when a Disney movie came out. So I'm sure if we didn't see this in the theater, we probably rented it the first week it was available at like Hollywood Video.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that same recollection fog where I know I've seen some of this era of Disney in theaters, but I don't remember which ones. It was a big thing that came out every year. Not to drive the point across even more, but it was their Renaissance era, and they went big with all these movies after the success of the first. I mean, really the first one, but that was Little Mermaid. Then Beauty and the Beast was like, let's repeat this formula and see if it works, and it did. So they kept going. So it was a big deal. I do think this is starts Hercules, that is, starts the back nine, as it were, of these films. The first half of the decade were like banger after banger after banger. And then these were all still good movies. I just think they started on their downward slope as the 90s finished off. That being said, though, amazing cast, like every celebrity possible in this movie, which is makes it weird that this is, again, in my quick recollection, the first of the latter half of the Renaissance era, so they started to get a little less popular. That could just be a personal opinion because we, of course, were getting older, and so
Mhm.
maybe our inclination to watch kiddie movies, as it were, when you're a preteen,
Yeah.
maybe we didn't care as much. But yeah, I don't. I probably we just rented it, or my both my mother and grandmother would always have a pretty vast Disney VHS collection. You know, the kind with the plastic like bookcase thing.
Oh, yeah. We had all
So
those.
yeah, So we probably just waited till one of them or both of them had bought it, and we just watched it at home or grandma's house together.
Mhm. Yeah, we had all of those. I wanna say is clamshell,
Yeah,
is that what they
clamshell.
call them? Yeah,
I
the
think
really
so.
big, like, the thick VHS case,
The bubble plastic
yeah, that I think you could only get at the Disney store. I remember it being Disney always had weird releases and, like,
from the
rules
vault.
about yeah, from the vault.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I specifically remember I worked at an FYE my freshman year of college, and people would come in all the time looking for random Disney movies they wanted to get their grandkids, and we had to explain to them that, like, Snow White or Alice in Wonderland wasn't necessarily available all the time because of the Disney Vault, and it was so frustrating having to explain the Disney release model and the Disney Vault to just, like, random customers who, like, really just wanna buy a kids movie. But I specifically remember having to explain this to people and then also just be like, "Why don't you just go to the Disney store, and they can probably explain it to you better and maybe give you an idea of, like, when it might be available again,"
Hmm.
and now they're just all streaming on their own streaming platform. So Hercules.
Yes.
Yes. We open with the Muses, which also could be referred to as a Greek chorus. As someone who was a huge theater nerd growing up, I just really appreciated this part of the movie. But they explained to us who Zeus is, how he trapped the Titans, which are these big, scary villains. And now he has a new baby, Hercules, with his wife, Hera. We see them with their newborn. Most of their fellow god friends are excited for them. But Hades, Zeus's brother, is not. Personally loved seeing all these Greek gods in their
Hmm.
Disney-fied forms.
Yeah.
Hades is a really cool villain. I like his sarcasm and his goofiness and
Yes.
yeah.
I always thought Hades was cool. I think he looked cool. I know throughout this episode, I'm going to mention that also in this Renaissance era, they were playing around with different art forms. They were doing the classical stuff. They're doing that kind of art form, but doing it all on the computer. So it looks like hand
Mhm.
drawn, but it was digital. And they're also doing CGI stuff.
Okay.
And this particular movie, I think, has like all the above. I believe.
Okay. That is something I noticed immediately watching it for this episode. I hadn't seen it in a while. The animation style, I feel like, is unique to this movie, and I could be wrong, but watching more of the, like, classic Disney releases and then seeing the animation style in Hercules, it's the way they drew the people seemed very different to me. There's
It's
this, like
they're more rendered looking.
mhm,
I think they are doing more of the classic style, but using a digital platform, so it's
mhm,
going to have that smoother look and finish.
mhm. But for me, thinking of the style of something like the way the human characters are drawn in something like Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin, you then watch Hercules, and I feel like the people in Hercules, um, the joints are so much pointier, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of, like, swirls, like,
Yeah,
their ears are a swirl, their even, like, their chest, their pecs are a swirl. It's like this is what I noticed right off the bat was just how different the human characters are drawn.
I don't think you see some human characters, but really most of these characters are not human. They're gods or godlike, have giant magic powers of some sort. The only real humans are kind of like background players, like when he goes to the city and whatnot. But still, I mean, they are kind of over the top characters, so they're drawn. Thus, the
That's
Hades'
fair, yeah.
hair is literally blue fire,
Yeah,
which
okay.
is fucking cool. And they do look, I want to say, bubblier, but not like in a
Mhm,
cutesy way. They just don't look
mhm.
as serious, like to scale drawing as Little
Yeah,
Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast.
yeah.
And those both have magical creatures as well, but they look like they're more
Mhm.
serious.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to put it. The characters at Hercules looked more cartoony to me,
Hmm.
even though obviously these are all animated movies. Hades is not thrilled about this baby being born. Hades runs the underworld. Is that correct? That's how we're referring to it as?
I mean,
That
as
is
far
it's the underworld, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's their version of hell. It's also called Hades, so it's like, why is he mad that he that's his name?
Yeah.
Unless they named it after him, I
That's
guess.
what
I don't know.
I was like, maybe they named it after him.
Yeah, I guess if I
Um,
was a ruler of an underworld, like this is Joe. Welcome to Joe. I got the consolation prize, so we're just gonna name it after me.
um, so welcome to. So there are three fates who are kind of witchy looking creatures who tell Hades that in 18 years there will be a planetary alignment that will allow him to release the Titans. But they warn him that the plan will fail if Hercules fights. So then Hades comes up with a whole plan to kill Hercules.
Right. We're gonna kill this baby.
But you know what? Really on track with how quote unquote child friendly the rest of the Disney movies were. We're
This
just
is
killing
true.
the baby this time instead of the parent.
Right. The fates look cool. I like that they shared an eyeball. They're very gross. Um,
Yeah.
the fates we kind of mentioned, Lion King and Hamlet. They reminded me of the witches in Macbeth a little bit.
hmm They on this rewatch, they reminded me too of Lock, Shock, and Barrel from Nightmare Before Christmas. But
Ah,
I also had recently watched Nightmare Before Christmas with my son because we watch that every year for both Christmas and Halloween.
yeah. If I remember to watch it, I usually try to do it around Thanksgiving, so it's like in the middle ish. It's
You
like a
split the
trans.
difference.
Yeah, it's like a transitional movie for me.
The point of the fates is that they can see into the future, and sometimes they can tell you what's going to happen, and sometimes not. It seems like they have kind of flexible rules about this, maybe. But one of them says something like, indoor plumbing, it's going to be big. And I remember that from the original trailer when Hercules came out.
I do remember that.
So Hades the character, not Hades the place, has these two minions named Pain and Panic. I guess they're kind of demon kind of creatures. But he sends them to kidnap Hercules, feed him a bottle full of poison, and that would then kill him. They succeed, except that he does not finish drinking the poison because they are interrupted by this well meaning farm couple who can't have children. So Hercules survives the attempted murder. He becomes human, but he still is very strong because he didn't finish drinking the poison and he gets adopted by this nice old couple.
Kind of because of the last episode, it reminded me a little bit, just maybe the farm aspect of because we just talked about Star Wars, and
hmm
it's again kind of this orphan boy situation living on a farm, but also kind of Superman.
Yeah.
It's
I
a lot
didn't even
of
think about that.
yeah, a lot of
A lot of
lost
farms.
boys that are living on farms.
hmm
Superman and Hercules, of course, being very very strong.
The muses sing a song where they are explaining that Hercules is mortal now and not able to live on Mount Olympus with his parents. There's a line that says, Zeus and Hera wept because their son could never come home. And just watching this now as a parent just like gutted me.
Oh wow,
Like, I don't know. It just hits so hard. But we turn to Hercules now as a teenager. He's struggling with this, incredible strength that he has. He's not able to control it very well. We can see how he is a help to his adoptive parents with farm work and errands and whatnot, but also we see him like destroy an entire market or city center because
yeah,
he just can't control himself.
I don't know my own strength.
Yep.
Definitely relatable to our at least a 12-year-old boy. I mean, I feel like all 12-year-old kids somehow had puberty woes, and this kind of reminded me of that. Like your body's changing and you can't control anything.
Yeah, it did hit me watching it back this time that it felt very like puberty coded. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
just watching this as an older person, but
probably.
it did feel very much like regular awkward teenage stuff, even though it's
Hmm.
obviously, like, not. This is another instance where the animation stood out to me too because, like, his feet and his calves are enormous compared to the rest of his body, and just, like I said, the different type of style that they're drawing people in this movie particularly. But I don't know, after he destroys the market, his adoptive parents decide to come clean about how they found him and this symbol of the gods they found with him. So Hercules decides to go to a temple of Zeus and talk to his father, Zeus. Zeus comes to talk to him through the statue and explains that yes, Hercules is a god, but was turned mortal. Um, he can come back to live on Olympus if he proves himself to be a true hero. And he gets reunited with Pegasus, which is a flying horse that his father gave to him when he was a baby. And I
Yeah.
always kind of thought it was ridiculous that Hercules remembered Pegasus when, like, he doesn't remember anything else about his life, obviously, because he was a baby.
Yeah, but we got to move the
Disney.
plot along. Yeah, I
Yep.
I mean, it made sense to me that at least Pegasus remembered Hercules, even though um, Pegasus was also a baby Pegasus at the time.
Yeah, but I feel like
But it'd
in
be like a dog
theory,
remembering me. Like I feel like the sense of smell was there. I guess I don't know because it's very much Hercules and Pegasus relationship. At least when they showed them as babies and then reunited them, I as a dog owner kind of gave me that best friend vibe that only a pet could provide.
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very much like a
I mean, they
dog
bro
kind
out
of
more
relationship.
later, but
Yeah, they do bro out more later.
but again, best friends.
Mhm.
They're more friends than they are like owner companion type deal.
Yes. So Hercules finds a trainer named Phil. I can't remember his full name. Phil.
I can't pronounce it. I don't think.
Yeah, we're not going to try. We're going to call him Phil. He is, what is the creature called? Satyr, a satyr.
Saturn.
Satyr, half man, half goat. I would not
Yes.
have come up with that on my own.
No.
Um, so Phil is also voiced by Danny DeVito,
Hmm.
which makes this character for me. So,
Yeah.
um, but he's trained all these other great fighters, but everyone has had a downfall of some sort. So he's kind of jaded and he's gotten out of the quote unquote hero training business. Hercules somehow convinces him to train him. I think he just shows him how strong he is. Oh, and then also Zeus like zaps him with lightning to be like, no, he's really my son, train him.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah, he's like, no, just do it. I
Yeah.
do like the montage. I do like that this film being of the age where I was starting to get into different mythologies
Hmm.
through the muses. You get the narrative push of the film. We skip we go from baby to teenager
Hmm.
just because the muses tell us. And to your point earlier, kind of gives me some theater vibes that would happen on a stage
Yeah.
show, which
Hmm.
is really cool. And I don't think I've ever made that connection. They zipped it along and they used the muses to do it, which was cool. But then
Hmm.
like through random stuff like this montage, you see other heroes that are just not going to be mentioned in a movie about Hercules, but you see like Achilles and his downfall, and he apparently Phil trained him as well, and all these other heroes. And as a kid, starting to get into it was pretty cool. It's like a little bit of eye candy.
Hmm. Well, going back to the theater comment, so a Greek chorus, I don't know if you understand that reference in terms of theater, but it's like a group of uh I don't know, people on stage that would kind of comment on the happenings of the play or like walk you through the play. So that is really what the muses are doing um through this. But yes, it does also help us to like zip along.
Yeah,
But also like I love a good montage, so it all really works for me.
heck yeah.
Yeah, I I love the songs in Hercules. We have Zero to Hero where he's training with Phil, and obviously he like gets really strong and he's ready to fight and be a hero, whatever this means, right? Um, so he needs to go prove himself. He goes to a city called Thebes because apparently Thebes has a lot of crime or something. Um,
Yeah, I
but
guess so.
this is what struck me though when they first arrive in Thebes. There's a bunch of like really shaken like citizens being like, "Oh my gosh, we're dealing with all this stuff." And yes, crime, but also like earthquakes and I don't know, fires or things that are more natural disasters. And I just keep thinking like, okay, like number one, how does he fix some of this? Right?
Hmm.
That's like the
Right.
natural disaster side of things. Also, like, is this just what it was like living then? You just had disaster after disaster? Like, I don't understand.
When you're
Because it just
living,
sounds horrible.
yeah, I think when you're living in a world that is controlled by the temperament of the gods,
There we go, yeah.
yeah, the earthquake might have been someone being mad. I mean, we just talked that Phil got zapped into,
Mhm.
you know,
Submission, yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say too, is it maybe less that they're natural disasters or more so like you're at the whims of these like really like temperamental beings who can control the weather and
right. It's probably both.
everything
I
else.
mean, if he's going to Thebes because it's known that it's high in crime, maybe the
Mhm.
gods are just like trying to punish people for being bad, and hence the earthquakes, fires, natural disasters. Sometimes the
There you
gods just
go.
did it because they wanted to entertain themselves.
That's true, yeah. So yeah, I guess it really did suck living then. I don't know.
At least in Thebes.
Yeah, at least in Thebes.
Pack your
Um,
bags.
so we meet Meg, who is the romantic interest for this movie. Hercules saves her from a this one's a centaur, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
that one I
okay.
know.
Okay.
The half goat one's
Um,
always hard because I think they never can pronounce it. So
yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's like a centaur and a minotaur, but a goat instead.
but not, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just gonna call him Phil. That's it.
There's a bunch of
Uh,
Phils out there.
yeah. Um, so Meg obviously looks like someone who needs saving, but she does not act like someone who needs saving. Uh, I always thought Meg was so cool. Like I wanted to be Meg. Like she's just really sarcastic and
Hmm.
like strong-willed and I don't know. I she's my favorite of all the Disney. She's not technically a princess, but I feel like she gets folded into like kind of the Disney princess group because she is the romantic interest of this movie. Um, but we find out that Meg is actually working with Hades, and that's why she really didn't care to be saved because she needed to get this centaur on Hades' side for the release of the Titans, maybe.
I forget what the deal was because he does not. Hades, that is, sorry. Hades does not know Hercules is still alive yet. He
Mm-hmm.
thinks he's out of the way. The centaur is there. Meg doesn't need saving. I think maybe she was trying to convince the centaur to work with them, with Hades. But Hercules shows up, and
Mm-hmm.
that foils her trying to get the centaur, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's, yeah, because she's like, oh, then this big guy showed up. What's his name? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what? I think that's what happened. And
Yeah.
I'd always
So
like, even when I rewatched and took notes, I was like, wait, why was she there? Was she trying to get the centaur? Did she need to be helped? Was it all fake? Is she
I
faking everything in this movie?
I remember Hades saying something like he wanted the centaur on his like team,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't understand why he needed him exactly. But the important thing is we see that Meg is working with Hades. And then this is also where Hades finds out that Hercules is still alive.
Hmm.
Um, I really like Pain and Panic as characters and just their them realizing like, wasn't that the baby we were supposed to kill 18 years ago?
Yeah. I love
Um,
that one of them is Bobcat Goldthwait,
yeah.
which somehow I knew then. Like, I recognize a lot of voices as a kid, maybe from watching
Hmm.
different movies, but Obviously, Danny DeVito, I think, was probably the biggest one for me as a 12-year-old, but I recognized Bobcat. Also, his name is Bobcat. Yeah, that name with that voice, once you learn those two together, we'll never not know who that is.
Yeah, definitely. There's this really big scene where Hercules is fighting a hydra. Um, when I was looking into more of the background of this movie, I read a little piece of trivia that said this was actually the first Disney movie to show, like, any type of blood or gore, because there is green blood, I guess,
Hmm.
when he first cuts the head off the hydra. Like, the hydra swallows Hercules, and he cuts off its neck from the inside. I guess I wasn't thinking of it as blood because it was green, I just thought it was, like, slime.
Slime or
Um,
mucus or.
right, but also I guess, still it being an animated movie and they didn't, I mean, I guess cutting its head off was kind of violent for a children's movie. I do remember my son being a little scared of this part when we watched it for the first time, but I think he was, like, 3.
Hmm.
Um, but I thought that was an interesting note that this was the first type of any sort of, like, blood or gore they showed in a Disney animated movie.
Huh. I mean, it
Um
makes sense, but I never noticed or thought about it. But yeah, he does just chop his head off from the inside out, which you
Mhm,
can't
yeah.
not notice that. But
Well, right.
yeah, yeah, other films they do the cutaway to from the violence.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Like,
think that is correct, yes, they show it some other way, like you said, cutaway or maybe as, like, a shadow or something.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Definitely no blood.
Definitely no blood, yeah. But again, I wasn't even really thinking of this as blood since it wasn't red.
Right.
But long story short, every time he cuts the head off a hydra, more come back. So he's eventually fighting this, like, multi-headed thing and manages to defeat it. Um, so then we go into another montage with another great song, um, of Hercules just, I don't know, defeating bad guy after bad guy.
Yeah, this would be his labors back in
Mhm,
the Greek mythology book,
mhm,
which is cool because just like the previous montage of him training, and getting Phil's background of failed heroes, we just get the like almost like the true story of Hercules of as far as like Greek mythology goes in
mhm,
like a 2-minute montage of all the labors he had to do to get back into Olympus. And I
mhm,
like that comes out after Lion King, and I like that one of them was the line of, oh God, read your notes, Joe. The line of the line of Neiman, I think is pronounced, and it's done in the style of Scar. Like it's got the reddish fur, black
mhm.
mane. I'm pretty sure it has a scar in his face, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
Um, it's cool. The animators Disney, they always do these little callbacks in their current movie, and it's like if you know, you know. If you noticed it, good on you.
mhm. Yeah, I remember there's a scene slightly after the montage where he's, I wanna say, posing for a portrait, and he's wearing the lion, like, skin, and it's
Yeah.
Scar. Yeah. Um, but this song, which I don't know the title of, but, bless my soul, Herc was on a roll, that gets stuck in my head all the time. It's been stuck in my head since we started, like, talking about this movie. Um, I just, again, love the muses,
Mm,
love the
yeah.
music in this. Uh, but despite him doing all these things, he is still not a true hero for whatever reason. I don't know if that's ever, like, truly explained.
He does things that he thinks makes him a hero by
Mhm.
defeating hydras and lions and
Yeah.
doing things that are incapable by normal mortals
Mhm.
who don't have gods as parents and his strength. So he thinks saving people makes him a
Mhm.
hero.
And to be
Um,
fair, if I had to fight all this scary stuff and was still told I wasn't a hero, I'd be pretty upset too.
right. Where are my flowers?
right?
Hmm.
It's like the Hydra alone, like, come
Right.
on.
Yeah.
So, but Hades sends Meg to find Hercules' weakness, or potentially to become his weakness. This is where we learn that Meg is only working with Hades because she traded her soul for her boyfriend's life. And he responded by leaving her for another woman. So she's basically jaded and hates men and is stuck working for Hades. Meg's song, I won't say I'm in love. I think that's the only song that a main character sings in this movie.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I didn't even
obviously the
think about that.
muses, yeah, obviously the muses sing it with her, but I think all the other songs are just the muses.
I I'm gonna believe you. I don't even remember. Like I didn't really notice that, so you pointed it out.
Hmm.
Because I mean, damn, we could have got Danny DeVito singing "Zero to Hero." That'd have been great.
But after she, you know, does her song, Hades tells Meg that she is Hercules' weakness. And Phil overhears this, tries to warn Hercules that Meg is a villain. Herc responds by fighting Phil and basically choosing Meg over him. So Phil's done. He walks away. He's like, this is why I don't train heroes anymore. Bye. And then Hercules is quickly approached by Hades, who kind of seems to have kidnapped Meg, which is all an act, but he offers to free Meg if Hercules gives away his strength.
Right. Yes. And this scene kind of reminds me of The Little Mermaid, where Ursula bewitches Ariel to trade her voice for legs. So now she can't sing, which she was known for singing. Again, that's what made the Renaissance era of Disney great. It was all the musical numbers. But then she
Mhm.
can't tell anybody who she is, and she has to um, win over her Prince Charming
Mhm.
as a mute. Um, so yeah, there's all these deals with backdoor stipulations. Is the point I'm making without going too much into the Little Mermaid? But I just again seeing the patterns here.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I hadn't even thought of that while I was watching it.
I have a
Um,
younger sister, and Little Mermaid was definitely the one she would have picked if she was recording this with us. So I needless to say, I watched that one a lot. So I was able to make that connection.
Fair enough. Quickly after Hercules agrees to this, he finds out that Meg really had been working with Hades and that Phil was right. He does not understand, though, that she wasn't exactly a willing participant, that she had sold her soul, yada yada.
Mhm.
Um, so now Hades can release the Titans. He doesn't have to worry about Hercules trying to stop him. Um, just like, again, we are not staying true to Greek mythology here necessarily, but just like imagine living in a world where these monsters are just stomping around and like destroying your houses, but then
Right.
also they have like, I don't know, like n- the ability to control nature too.
Hmm.
Although
All
the
these
outlaw,
just crazy powers.
right? Like it reminded me of what we said about Thebes, where it's like, I don't know, these people control like weather and earthquakes and whatever, and you just have to like you just anything can happen at any time. Just
Just deal with it.
you just deal with it, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but then you have this kind of outlier, which is the Cyclops, which as far as I can tell does not control any type of natural element. Um, so Hercules fights the Cyclops for whatever reason, even though he
I,
has no strength.
yeah. I was confused here because I wasn't sure if they were implying the Cyclops worked with Hades slash the Titans or was a Titan because the Cyclops in
Mhm.
this movie is rather large, larger
Mhm.
than I would have thought a Cyclops to be
Yeah.
on my vast knowledge of Cyclopses. Cyclopes doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, he fights him because I think. Meg is involved somehow, or he just gets over the fact that he has a broken heart, and he, even though he has no
It
godlike strength, he's still a big dude.
Yeah, he's just like, "Well, what else am I gonna do? I
Yeah,
gotta
I
try to
got these
save
muscles.
people." Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the Cyclops can be so uncomfortable, just like this melting looking thing, looking like it was wearing a diaper, like, I don't know. Just watching this back, I was just like, "What is this guy?"
But yeah, he's working over Hercules a little bit. Hercules has met his match now that he has no strength,
Sure.
and Meg saves him. I think, right? Like
I
pushes him out of the way or something.
Yeah, but she also, like, kind of allows a pillar to fall on her because if she gets hurt, the deal is broken and he would get his strength back because the deal he made with Hades was that she wouldn't get hurt, right?
Another
So,
backdoor stipulation.
there you go. Which really, you would think Hades would have thought about that a little bit because the whole point of releasing the Titans is that they're going to be destructive. Like anyone could get
Right.
hurt. So it was really not
Yeah.
like the best
Well,
deal on his
it's
end.
yeah. That's where arrogance gets in the way. He just wants his end result, um, but then he doesn't
Right.
do anything to protect Meg himself in any sort of ways. Like, all right, I promise you, she won't get hurt. You don't give me because, like, I guess in the deal,
Hmm.
it's between Hades and Hercules. Like, I'm not going to do anything to hurt her. I promise you, because he's the one holding her captive.
Right.
I mean, he
But
doesn't say that. He doesn't say it's not going to be me that hurts her. But the idea in this negotiation is like, she won't get hurt if you give me your powers. Then he releases her,
mhm.
so then she gets hurt.
Let's see if he had just been a little more specific.
Right.
Like you said, loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so Meg dies from her injuries, but Hercules gets his strength back. So he goes to the River Styx to save her soul. Um, in case you are unaware, that's where all the souls float around in Hades. Uh, so Hades allows Hercules to dive into this river to get Meg's soul because he knows that, I don't know, Hercules will wither and die from the river before he can swim to her and get back out.
Yes,
Um,
this the river is a bunch of dead souls, like you said, and
yeah,
they're in the underworld, which God or no God, anybody living is not supposed to be there.
right.
So he's basically it's like suicide.
Yes. This is one thing that struck me though about, I mean, arguably, I guess, about Greek mythology in general, not necessarily this Disney movie,
Oh,
but it's like death is just always bad. Like, even if you didn't die a horrible death, like even if you just passed away after a long and maybe mostly good life, it's seen as very bad and scary to die regardless because then you're just in the creepy underworld.
are we talking in general or just Greek mythology or Disney? Because the answer to all of that is probably yes. But
I guess from the way that Greek mythology sets up the concept of death and the underworld,
yeah,
like regardless of how, peaceful your death was or fulfilled your life was, it just seems like death is always like a bad, scary place.
so I think you're saying there's no alternative to the river Styx. There's no heaven, so
Yeah,
to
there's
speak.
no like good afterlife, I guess.
Yeah.
Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we could open Pandora's box and go further down. I think like if you had money and you put like the coins on your eyes, you paid the
Mhm.
ferryman to get you across the river
Mm,
to what ends I don't remember, and they obviously aren't going to show it in this movie. But I think there were alternatives to not suffering in the afterlife.
okay.
But like any religion or religion esque thing with gods involved, I think the idea of the scary underworld of death is to, hopefully coerce you into being a good person.
But what
Except
does
for
being a good person get you in this
in
situation? Do you know
in
what
this
I
situation, I
mean?
don't know. Yeah, right. I don't.
Because, so spoiler alert, he saves Meg. Um,
Oh yeah, back to that.
One day she will die, whether it's from an accident or old age or whatever, and she's just gonna end up there again, right? In the bad place.
In the bad place. Um, yes. I don't have. If you're asking me to give you an answer, I don't think I have one. Um,
Do you get what I'm saying? It
I
just
get what you're
seems
saying.
like
I
there's
just
no
don't know. Yeah,
alternative. Like, death is always bad and scary, it seems.
yeah. That's what it does appear.
Like,
There's
his
there's a lot of
perfectly nice adoptive parents are probably gonna end up there when they die in, like, the scary
Jesus.
place.
Stop it.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to call your son in. Like he's gonna have to talk me through this.
You having an existential crisis now.
Yeah. What is being good ever gonna do? Apparently,
Well, in ancient Greece, what did it get you? This is what I mean.
earthquakes and fire and cyclops wearing diapers.
But that's when you were alive. When you're dead, it's, like, worse because 'cause you're in,
It's
like, the
worse.
death river.
Oh no. Oh. Hmm.
Anyway, um,
Having a breakdown over here.
okay.
Hercules
So,
saves her, becomes a true hero because he was unselfish.
yes. So this is how Hercules becomes a true hero. It's not enough that he, like, saved people inadvertently by, like, killing monsters that would probably, like, stomp on them. He had to be, like, completely selfish, and he risked his life to save Meg. Um, we find this out when he is swimming through the river trying to get to her, and the fates are about to cut his string that represents his life, and
Yeah.
the string won't cut because now he's a god, he's immortal. Um, so Hercules submerges from the river with Meg's soul, gets back up to the regular world, I guess, and brings her back to life. Um, he can now go live up on Mount Olympus with his parents. Somewhere in all of this, the Titans get defeated.
Yeah. I'm assuming the gods did it again.
Slight aside, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
yeah,
Hercules doesn't do it. He's busy saving Meg.
yeah. I don't have any notes about what happened to the Titans.
I feel in my head, I'm picturing them just like stomping off like toddlers. Like I think Zeus and his god buddies and all the people in Olympus, I think they fought back and got rid of them again.
But I thought they got some of the gods. I don't remember. I don't
Zero
know.
to hero, okay, zero to hero.
Zero to hero. Zero to hero. They're defeated. Where are those muses to sum things up when we need them? In theory, Hercules has gotten everything he wanted, except now he's in love with Meg, and Meg is mortal. So he decides to remain mortal so he can stay on Earth with Meg and live a life with her. Um, I think gets to keep Pegasus, though, probably. And Zeus makes a constellation in the sky of Hercules. The villagers look up in the sky and say, "Hey, that's Phil's boy," which is what Phil always dreamed of, training a hero that was great enough that people would see him and say, "Oh, that's Phil's boy," because Phil trained him.
Yeah, he wanted to be
Um,
known as a good teacher.
yeah, so made me tear up a little bit for Danny DeVito.
Yeah,
Um, that's really it. And we have the muses take us out with another song. Do you have any other thoughts on Hercules since we have very quickly reached the end?
this episode's gonna be quicker because probably Disney movies at the time were
Shorter,
of a
yeah.
little shorter length.
Yeah.
I did like the training with Phil and Hercules. It gave me Rocky vibes.
Mhm.
Just like he's constantly badgering him and not putting him down in a negative way, just like kind of trying to motivate him.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
My one little note that I had was that Hercules was voiced by Tate Donovan, which at the time was a very big deal because he was dating Jennifer Aniston. from Friends, and this is when
Hmm.
Friends was really big.
Mm.
Um, and he also had a guest arc on Friends probably around the same time where he was like, I think Rachel's boyfriend for a little bit. So it was a big deal that like Jennifer Aniston was huge because of Friends, and then her boyfriend was voicing Hercules.
I also like the pottery art, the
Mhm.
cutaways. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
We mentioned the actors? Did we mention James Woods and how I probably should have known his voice as a kid because I feel like he's always playing bad guys, but
Mhm.
I recognize his voice as well, and I think
Yes.
I'm torn between his character and Danny DeVito, which one I like. I think fits the best, and I feel like I like Woods as Hades.
Mm. He did add I feel like Hades is just such a good character because he's so like, obviously he's evil, but he's so, like, sarcastic and
Hmm.
funny, and Phil, I think you could argue, is, like, slightly more one note because he's just more serious and he has a job to do,
Yeah.
but it's still Danny DeVito.
Hmm. Did it hold up?
I mean, for me, definitely. I still love the music. I feel like out of every Disney movie, this one, the songs are solid all the way through, and just, like, having the muses, at least for me, makes it feel like such a fast-paced watch because, I mean, yes, it's short already because it's a Disney movie and it's a kids movie, but I feel like there is never really a dull moment, there's never a lull because you always have the muses, like, carrying you through everything. Um, I don't know, I still had fun with it, and I felt like it was just very witty, very fast-paced compared to some of the other Disney movies of this time.
Yeah, it definitely felt more fast paced, but I think it's because we start with baby Hercules and end up with God Hercules, who then, of course, renounces his
Mhm.
goddomness, his ability to
His
be a god.
his
Um,
immortalness.
yeah, but we see his whole lifespan and all the things, lots of
Mhm,
montages.
mhm.
So it kind of, I think, makes it feel faster, but it does hold
Yeah.
up for me. I did write music was so good.
Mhm,
Not that any of the Disney movies in this time frame had bad music, but
mhm,
to your point, it's all seemed to be more up tempo,
mhm.
more fun. I want to say the
Yeah.
songs. There wasn't like a lot of, maybe besides Meg's, but a lot of like sad, depressing music numbers.
Yeah, and that's the thing, even when sad things are happening, I feel like the music still carries you through, it's a little more upbeat. Like,
Hmm.
even when I would argue, I guess, the only, like, really sad song obviously, like, the content of Meg's song saying, like, "I won't say I'm in love" is, like, sad, but it's still an upbeat song. You have the part at the beginning where the muses are talking about the baby being mortal and how sad his parents are. Still, like, the music's so good, and it carries you through that part, like, fairly quickly, honestly, that it you don't really have time to dwell on any, like, low points because then you're just,
Yes.
like, on to the next thing,
Yeah.
but not
We're-
in a sense that you've, like, missed any emotional points or plot points.
yeah. I think that helps a lot.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it holds up for me as well.
Yeah.
I remember really liking Hercules as a kid, partly as we talked about getting into the different mythologies, but it's like kind of a fun action comedy type movie.
Mhm. Yeah, that's accurate, yes.
With crazy larger than life characters. So what's not to like?
Right, and Danny DeVito.
At Danny DeVito.
We're gonna take a break.
Welcome back to Back Through the Lens, and now we're going to discuss my movie pick, which I happen to pick Aladdin. If you didn't guess from the subtle hints Rachel was dropping, Oddly enough, directed by the same two guys, John Musker and Ron Clements. Released was it November 11th, 1992, rated G. And this is also based on an old story. This is Aladdin and the Magic Lamp. If you haven't read that story or seen the Disney animated feature, let me give you a little rundown. On the mean streets of Agrabah lives Aladdin and his bestie, a monkey Abu. They have to lie, cheat, and steal to survive. And eventually, their luck runs out and they are captured. While they are in the underground dungeon of the palace, they strike a deal with an evil sorcerer to escape and retrieve a lamp. Betrayed and left for dead, Aladdin releases the genie from the lamp and is given three wishes. Together, they must stop the evil Jafar from taking over the palace and the city. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot right there. Um, First time I saw this, again, as we mentioned in Hercules, it could be a false memory. I don't remember if I saw this in theater 100% or not, or if we just waited for the annual release with the plastic clamshell and we saw it on VHS. I want to say I did see this one in theaters because I have a made up memory of seeing the Cave of Wonders on the big screen and just being in awe. But I can't fully commit that as fact. I do know we saw Beauty and the Beast in theaters. My sister and grandmother, that came out in between Little Mermaid and Aladdin. So that being said, can't fully remember if I saw it in theaters or not. But remember watching it a lot. I think maybe part of it was the more quote unquote boy aspects of it. The main character is a would be
Mhm.
prince versus a would be princess, so I can associate with him. But if we're all being honest, it's probably because of the damn genie, for me at least.
Mhm.
And Rob Williams, who's like the voice of our childhood.
Yeah.
How about you?
So I know I saw this in theaters. Again, it was always an event when a new Disney movie came out when we were kids. And I specifically remember this one because I remember my dad was even excited to see it because he liked Robin Williams. And it was such a big deal that Robin Williams was in a Disney movie. And also, just as a kid, it was kind of a big deal if my dad was ever able to go to stuff like this with us, just because he worked a lot. My mom was the stay-at-home parent, but so, like, the 4 of us all went to see it, and that was, like it must have been a big deal if, like, my we waited for my dad to be able to go with us, you know? Um,
That's pretty awesome.
yeah, but I specifically remember my dad being like, "Yeah, even I wanna see that because I like Robin Williams." So
That's actually a good point. We had mentioned in Hercules all the big names, James Woods, Dan DeVito. There are others.
Mhm,
Um, those to me like the two biggest ones. For me personally, there are other ones, but
mhm,
Aladdin being, I believe, if I'm correct, the third movie in this Renaissance era. I do remember, and looking it up, I remember reading about it. Like this was a big deal having such a big name in a Disney movie
mhm,
because they're just normally voice actors that have just been doing it for a while and they're big names in their field. But this is someone coming from
mhm,
live action, comedy, stand up, serious movie roles
mhm, yep,
to play the genie.
mhm.
Like they were sparing no expense here.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that's all I got for pre-commentary movie. I don't know. I just remember you brought up your dad wanting to watch because of Robin Williams. I'm like, oh yeah, that was like a huge thing. And then
Yeah,
as we see in later movies, they just get like big actors to do these things.
mhm. Yeah, because I was gonna say with Danny DeVito being in Hercules, that was at least Danny DeVito, I feel like, was known to our generation because of Matilda and
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
maybe other movies I'm forgetting, but,
the Penguin, Batman Returns. I don't know if that was the same time before or after Hercules, but
oh,
it's the
right,
'90s.
yeah. Although I could see myself as a kid not realizing that was him just because of the makeup. But yeah,
Yeah.
I watched that Batman movie all the time, both
Hmm.
Batman movies. Um, but even more so, I think Robin Williams was so widely known.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, let's start going through the movie here.
mhm,
At the beginning, we get this cool sweeping like aerial shot of the city of Agrabah. which for me I thought was pretty cool and iconic. On the rewatch, I was like, oh yeah, I really love this opening. They have this big sweeping aerial shot, which is pretty cool, really well done. Kind of paints the city of Agrabah. In each of these Disney movies in this time period, they're going to different parts of the world, whether they're made up or not. You know, you go under the water, you go, I think, Green Beach is France. And as what, a 9 year
Mhm.
old, I don't know much about French culture, I guess. And now we're going to, you know, Northern Africa, Middle East area,
Mhm.
and so they do a really good job with design and kind of making you feel like you're there as far as being in a Disney animated feature is. And we meet the street vendor, and he kind of acts as our narrator, which we don't get throughout the whole movie like the muses, but we bookend with him, so we're just assuming
Mhm.
he's telling us the whole story. And of course, it's your boy Robin Williams, because one role, doing 1,000 voices in one role wasn't enough. We have to do another
Right.
one. But I remember as a kid, I didn't expect it. I was like so happy. I'm like, oh my god, it's him! It's Robin Williams already, and he's not even the genie yet.
Yep.
Um, and there's actually a point I want to make about that, but we'll wait to the end on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The opening just really, I don't know, took me back to just feeling like I was when I was a kid. Like, obviously, like I said, I saw this in the theater, but we watched it at home a lot too. And just that feeling of, I guess, what I would consider a classic Disney movie. Um, I consider Aladdin maybe more of a classic than something like Hercules. I think Aladdin was just a bigger movie. Uh, and also I was younger when that came out. But yeah, it took me
Yeah.
right back to like how like big and exciting it felt when I would watch this as a kid. It felt like this really big adventure, even though watching it back as an adult, I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the point of this, I guess.
Yeah.
um, yeah. So we starts telling the story, and it goes to the middle of the desert. With we enter Jafar, our would be villain here, and he's
Mhm.
trying to get to the Cave of Wonders. And of course, no good villain would do the dirty work himself. So he has this random, ill-fated, not nice-looking guy, and he gets him to go in the cave. And he is, quote from the cave, he's not. Does he say diamond? Yeah, the cave is looking for the diamond in the rough, and
Yeah,
this,
the cave says to bring the diamond in the rough.
yeah, and so this also evil-looking character gets eaten whole by the cave because he is not a diamond in the rough.
Mhm.
Which to me now and as a kid meant, oh, a good person. You're looking for a good person, Jafar.
Yeah, I guess I never really took it that way. I guess I just always felt like, "Oh, what a great coincidence that Jasmine fell in love with the same guy who is also the diamond in the rough."
Right. Yes.
So this introduction to Jafar and have you mentioned Iago?
Now,
Okay, what do you wanna
go for it.
okay. So we have this introduction to Jafar, like you said, but also his little parrot friend, Iago, who I think is the only animal character in Aladdin who can actually talk. Like, Abu sort of talks, but, like,
Right,
not.
sort of. He
Yeah,
talks in monkey talk, I suppose.
right? Yeah. Um, watching this back for the episode, uh, Gilbert Godfrey does the voice of Iago, made me realize that he's since passed. Somewhat
Hmm.
recently, he passed, um, and obviously Robin Williams is gone too, and that's kind of what hit me just watching the introduction, like, not to be a total downer, but I feel like these were 2 pretty big voices when we were kids, and, I mean, Gilbert Godfrey, I think I probably only knew him as Iago in Aladdin, especially when I was little. Robin Williams is a little different because he did some other kids' movies, but,
Yeah.
um, I don't know. That's just kinda what hit me, and it made me especially miss Robin Williams a lot because I feel like you said, it was so exciting to realize that he was that narrator in the opening scene, like, we're already getting some Robin Williams, like, he was just such a big, like, larger than life figure,
Yeah.
probably in general, but also to our childhood.
Yes, all the characters he played.
Mhm,
I think I knew um, Gilbert Gottfried's voice. I can't remember why as a kid. I did have some tapes of movie Problem Child and Problem Child 2, and he's in those movies. So like silly, dumb kids movies, where there's a kid who is a problem child. He's just this bad little boy and causes chaos. Kind of like I don't know, we have Dennis the Menace at home type deal.
mhm, yeah,
But Gilbert Gottfried, that is in those movies. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things. As a kid, I don't know how I recognize the voice, but I know that voice. I know who that is. Just kind of like with Hercules, Bobcat Goldthwait. It's like I probably haven't seen things with him in it, or if I did, they were small. And how do I? But unique voices, they never escape you.
mhm, yeah,
Um, and then in the scene too, kind of predating Hercules, because it comes up before Hercules. Um, but it's you're starting to see a little bit of that computer animation. I think I see it with the Cave of Wonders, both
mhm,
outside and in. We'll get to later, but a different animation style, not just the movie in general, but
mhm,
specifically the cave, the tiger head, and then inside all the lava.
right,
And I thought that was cool. But meanwhile, back at the palace, we have our Princess Jasmine, and we're introduced with her scaring off a would-be suitor. Apparently, she just keeps scaring away these other princess,
princes,
princes. She keeps scaring off other princes because she doesn't want to be dictated who to marry. She wants to live her own life. She also feels overprotected and sheltered by her father, the Sultan. As an adult, I think I picked this up not as a kid, but I feel with the loss of her mother, which they don't explain, but here we go with that. We have one parent, and they
mhm,
don't explain why. I felt on the rewatch he's protecting her because they lost the mother, and it's all that the Sultan has left to remind him of his presumably his wife.
mhm,
A lot of assumptions here in this rewatch as an adult, but it's like one of those things. It's like, oh, when you're watching as a kid, it's like dad's being a dad, telling me what to do, trying to
mhm,
protect me, doing the dad thing, but a little bit more layered as an adult, I guess. Um, there's
I
a
could
few
see
things
that,
he says to her that gives me that kind of feeling. I
mhm,
can't think of the specifics. It's just like his tonality and how he talks to her when
mhm,
she's throwing these tantrums and I want to do my own thing, blah blah blah. And he's like, well, I just want to protect you and give you a good life. So,
mhm, I could see that, and it's just, like, his only immediate family that's left too,
mm-hmm,
so,
that we are at least shown. So yeah,
yeah.
For-
Yeah, that's true, at least from what we know. Um, so I had a slightly different take on Jasmine just as a little girl watching this. Like, I was just so obsessed with like her hair and her headband, and I would try to do that like ponytail with like the hair bands like halfway through the ponytail like how she did. Obviously, it didn't look as good because I didn't have like the voluminous cartoon hair. Um, uh, but I think this is also where we learn that Jafar, who we met in the very beginning as kind of a villain, is also the Sultan's most trusted advisor because
yes.
we see the Sultan complain to Jafar about Jasmine not wanting to marry anyone that he picks out for her. Um, so I did have a thought while I was watching this too that I think Jafar is the only Disney villain I can think of off the top of my head that was just purely evil. Like, there's no comedy with him, there's no sarcasm. There
Hmm.
like, with Hades in Hercules, he could be very funny, he could joke around, he could
Well, I think that's what Iago is for. Iago was kind of an offshoot of
Oh, yeah.
Jafar.
Because
And
he was like the comic relief of the villain side of
yeah,
things. I don't know. Hmm.
yeah, Jafar was, I guess,
Just
not.
Jafar was like stone cold.
Yeah, very
Like,
serious, always
yes,
serious.
exactly. And you're probably right that it works because you have Iago sort of as that sarcastic side, that funnier side.
Hmm.
Um, but just thinking about at least other Disney villains of this time period that we're talking about, you had Gaston in Beauty and the Beast, who was obviously very silly. Um, he could be cruel, but he still had this like undeniably silly side. Ursula and the Little Mermaid still like sung some songs and kind of played a part when she had to.
Yeah, but she was also up there for just evil
Just evil,
without
yeah.
having like a funny note.
Mhm.
She was kind of funny with well, without getting too far down the rabbit hole there, but Flotsam and Jetsam was kind of her Iago.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, she wasn't too funny, and she did have some one-liners
Mhm.
more than Jafar, but it's usually like the bad guy having some sort of not human sidekick that's a little sillier. They always kind of get the blunt end of some physicality when
Mhm.
things don't go the way the villain wants it to go.
Mhm.
Which for kids, it's a little slapstick humor and it's funny. Like, oh, the bad guy's getting hurt because they're bad, but the more
Mhm.
bad guy's the one doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like it's okay violence when it's bad guys, I guess.
Yeah. And as we previously discussed, no blood and gore in the violence unless you're
No,
Hercules.
yeah. Why would you also not want to be Jasmine? She had a tiger. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I just thought I don't know. I think it's probably something every little girl did if they were my age when these movies were coming out, like finding things about the princesses that maybe weren't relatable, but that were aspirational or just that you
Mm.
thought were really freaking cool. And yeah, I wanted her hair and pet tiger. That's pretty much
Mm.
what I got out of
A
this
girl can
movie.
dream.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I was saying, the Sultan is her only parent, but then we go to another hero that has no parents at all. We see Aladdin, who, as they refer to him as a street urchin in this film, just kind of no parents, no explanation. That's how Disney rolls, and we're okay with it. But he does have a friend, and they just live in their street life. They gotta steal the bread to survive. And there's a song and dance number as he's running from the guards, nearly avoiding being cut with giant sabers or attacked from you know other vendors that don't want their stuff stolen from them, which is understandable. In the end, they get away after the song, and they like climb over a wall and they literally break bread, go to eat it, and Aladdin sees these little orphan kids, and him and Abu give them their bread. Um,
Mhm.
you know, kind of unselfishly giving up the food he just fought so hard to get.
Mhm.
He gave it
But
away
that's how we know he's a good person.
exactly. Yes, he would have gone in the river Styx, I think. Also,
Yeah, I could see that. So we eventually have Aladdin seeing Jasmine out and about in the market, right? Because she's escaped from the palace, disguised herself, kind of.
yeah.
Um,
After the 1000th suitor, she's like, I don't want to live here anymore, and she dresses up by putting a shawl over all her princess garb, and now
right.
she's a street person.
Mhm. Um, her not realizing she has to pay for things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I think just the apps, like how sheltered you would have to be to not realize that pain is something you have to do, like really hit me this time.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. Maybe she's supposed to be a teenager in this movie and she really doesn't know. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of very small, quick commentation of like rich versus poor and the
mhm.
arrogance and or ignorance that she might have.
Right.
I mean, she's not painted bad. She's just painted as she literally didn't know. But if you think too hard, which we shouldn't do for Disney movies, but maybe
Mhm.
her being the daughter of a sultan, which has this giant palace and oversees the city, maybe she kind
Mhm.
of thinks everything is theirs, but in a way, not like in a not like in a
Yeah.
like she takes ownership, but in a way where she doesn't understand how things work outside the palace walls because she's
Yeah.
been so sheltered.
Yeah. It's just an extreme, I guess, of the fact that she's like, "Pay?" When the guy asks how she's gonna pay for it, it's not even like, "Oh, but look, I gave it to a hungry child." It was like literally the notion of paying for something is so foreign. But also if that is so foreign to her, does she then think like there are no hungry people in her kingdom? Because she's just like, "Oh, this kid's hungry. Here, take this apple from this cart."
Maybe she's also good in heart and she just assumes that you should feed a starving child an apple instead of having to pay for it. Like he should have been like maybe the vendor should have been doing this himself.
Maybe. But then she obviously like sees how Aladdin lives.
Right. Let's
So,
not overthink Disney movies.
okay.
So she
But
steals an apple.
yeah, so she steals an apple. Aladdin saves her from being like punished by the street vendor. Um but it's funny to me that we go from her like literally not understanding how, I don't know, life works, to then this point where he jumps over a building. He jumps from one building to another, and he puts a plank down for her to be able to walk across, but she's able to jump over to the next building as well and says she's a fast learner. Aladdin and Abu are both very impressed by this. So we go from her being just completely, what's the word I'm looking for? We go from her being completely devoid of any sense of reality to then being like, "Oh, I could leap over to the next building." Like, to a very capable, like, warrior
Yeah.
princess.
Right.
Um, so I don't know, how sheltered is she? Or did she just, like, learn how to fight in the palace? I don't know.
I was gonna say I never kind of put those two in juxtaposition like that before. I kind of always thought was she was a tough girl. Like she didn't need Aladdin to help her
Mhm.
cross the building because she's also capable of doing what he just did. But now
Yeah.
that you're saying that, it's like, yeah, but you also needed him to not get your arm cut off. So, hmm.
Well, not even that, like, she just didn't even understand the concept of, like, paying for goods.
Well, that's what I mean, though.
Yeah. Mm. Because yeah, I always thought of her as one of the more capable Disney princesses, but now that I've like gone through this whole bit with you, I'm like not sure anymore. Maybe she's just physically capable, but she just really doesn't know how the world works.
Yeah. Hmm.
Which is which means she doesn't understand how her own kingdom works, which means she wouldn't understand what people actually need if she doesn't understand the concept of paying for food.
I can go back and pick a different movie.
Just saying, like, what kind of ruler are you gonna be, hun? Like, if you can't.
Hmm. Yeah. I guess the elephant in the room would be that in this movie,
Mhm.
which I still don't know when the opening street vendor is telling us is supposed to take place a long time ago. I'm not sure. The vibe I
Mhm.
got as a kid, this was more in the past, but also this is a different culture
Yeah.
than 2024 America. But there are different things in different countries that are looked at versus men versus women, gender roles, and that's why she is quote unquote in need of a suitor. The suitor would probably have been the next sultan and have
And not
ruled
really
the
her.
kingdom. Yeah.
Mhm. Fair enough.
But so they're having a little romantic fleeing from pain and punishment, and she's showing how capable and strong she is. And so this is kind of winning over Aladdin. Um, Also, like she keeps giving him the flirty doe eyes. probably helps a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but they end up the palace guards end up like climbing up to their little hideout and finding him. And unlike the last time, Aladdin does not escape and he gets captured. And that's when Jasmine takes off the shawl and reveals that she is who she actually is and demands that they release Aladdin. And the head guard is like, "Oh, this is Jafar's doing. You have to take it up with him."
Mhm.
So, who's more powerful, the Sultan or his advisor? Because Jafar pulls a lot of strings behind the Sultan's back, and these guys tend to listen to him.
Yeah, it's a good point. I guess I always thought of it as Jafar having his own, security
Mm,
detail or something.
okay. Okay.
Um, and I think there is a part where the Sultan tries to talk to him about it, and Jafar just hypnotizes him with the snake staff.
Yeah,
So that could be part of it too, is that he's been hypnotizing the Sultan.
that's true. Or maybe he's like just the second in command. So if he says for the guards to do something, they're just
Mhm.
assuming that's what is needs to be done.
Yeah,
It's coming
that's
from the
fair too.
second highest boss, I guess.
Mhm.
And then he gets what
I
he
could see
wants
that.
by hypnotizing the Sultan.
Mhm.
Man, he is evil. Yeah, so yeah, Aladdin gets captured. They are in the dungeon and they're trying to escape, but they cannot. They can't pick the locks. And Aladdin's all down and out about Jasmine not being poor like he is or living on the street because he thinks he has no shot at the princess, even though they literally just met, but that's fine. It's a Disney movie. You're supposed to have a prince and princess. We get it.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's really harping on that how different they are
Mhm.
because she is a princess and he is clearly not. When this very elderly person uh, in the dungeon is like, "Oh, we can get out if you only if you promise to help me." And I like just how this character is drawn, and he's like missing an eye, and he looks very haggard and
Mhm. Mhm.
hunchbacked and bearded, and you when you're watching it, you're like, a you're rooting for Aladdin, who's clearly the hero of the movie. It's named after him, the movie that
Mhm.
is. But you see this old man in the dungeon. You're like, Aladdin, you better say you're going to help this guy because he looks like he's been here a while. Like there is no getting out of this. So it's either help this mysterious character. That's really it. That's the only option.
Yeah, although even as a kid, I was like, "This guy looks so suspicious." And
Oh
also, if
yeah.
he knew how to get out of here, like, why wasn't he out of here already? Because, like you said, he looks like he's been there a while.
Hmm.
He could have just left before.
Yeah, because then he shows them how to leave after they get the
Like, with or
chains.
without the treasure, yeah, he could have
Yeah,
just
because they like
left.
go through a secret little loose stone passage.
Mhm.
Um, so, but yeah, it's clearly a setup. Because
Yeah.
surprise, this is actually Jafar in disguise.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Uh,
Um, so he takes them as still as an old man, as the old
mhm.
beggar. He takes them to the Cave of Wonders,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna keep feeding this cave people until we find the right one." Luckily, it is Aladdin, and he is allowed to enter the cave.
Mhm.
The cave is filled with all sorts of glorious amounts of treasure and stones and gems and statuettes, probably made of lots of metal that are super expensive, bronze and whatnot. And he's only supposed to grab the lamp. Not only does Jafar, as the old man, tell him that, but the cave tells him that.
Mhm.
They're not allowed to touch any treasure but the lamp.
Mhm.
And Boo, he is a very greedy little monkey. We see this in other scenes when they're trying to survive. He was reluctant to
Mhm.
give his bread away, but he did the right thing. He
Mhm.
grabs a bunch of apples instead of just one. But I can't blame him too much. And a little side note, he's also like Aladdin's comic relief. Like everyone
Yeah.
has this monkey or some sort of side pet thing to kind of take the serious tone down a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
but I also don't blame him, Abu, because they live on the street, and when you have nothing and you're presented with all the riches imaginable,
Mhm.
I can see why it would be hard for him to not want to take the giant ruby that's bigger than his
Yeah.
head. Um,
Mhm. And he's probably taking a bunch of these gold coins thinking they could, like, buy some food now.
right.
Yeah.
Anything. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, eventually they get to the, I'm assuming, the heart of the cave where
Mhm.
the lamp is um, in spotlight as well.
Mhm.
And this scene where he's getting the lamp, and then what's about to happen next, Boo losing his, he finally gets tempted and grabs this giant ruby, and the cave
Mhm.
starts falling around him. The lamp scene and then the escape give me Indiana Jones vibes with two different movies. It's like the Temple of
Mhm.
Doom, the very
Mhm.
beginning Temple of Doom, but and where he grabs the little statuette and escapes from the boulder, but also the whole cave itself reminds me of the Last Crusade, where there's all this treasure and different chalices when they're supposed to find the cup of Christ, and you basically have to ignore all these earthly treasures and find the most kind of
Mhm.
superficially lackluster item that's
Mhm.
actually most valuable.
Yeah.
When they were escaping, also being kids of '90s, these
Mhm.
popular movies became popular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and Sega games.
Mhm.
And this goddamn level in the video
Yep.
Aladdin video game where you're trying to escape the cave on the
Yes.
carpet was so freaking impossible.
Yes, it was impossible. I don't think I ever got past this level.
I think I did a couple times, but it took me and my two best friends like a sleepover, everyone just taking turns. And by the way, video
Mhm.
games back then, there was no save. You had 3 lives, you died, you start over. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
forgot
you
about
had to
that.
get past this. I mean, there were some save points, but it wasn't just like, oh, I can
No.
just go right from here. No,
Yeah.
you got to start back over. And it
Nope.
was the biggest pain in the ass until the Lion King video game came out. That shit was impossible too.
Yeah. Yeah, I never got far in either one, but I
Yeah.
specifically remember not being able to get past this in Aladdin. My brother and I both, we couldn't get past it.
Yeah.
But
Cool scene though, and I liked all the lava, how it was more computer animated looking. Same thing with Carpet. Um, just his style, how he flies, how he flutters, definitely
mhm,
stuck out to me. Both then and more now that I've kind of noticed it on the 100th watching. It's like little
mhm.
things you notice.
Yeah, I enjoy how both Carpet and Abu kind of have these mime-like abilities. Um, I guess Carpet especially because it doesn't have a face to really emote with.
Right.
Um, did we mention they find a magic carpet? I don't know if
We did now, yeah.
yeah, okay. So in
Yeah,
the
when,
Cave of Wonders, they find a magic carpet. It's named Carpet.
yeah. That
Mhm.
was before all hell broke loose. Yeah, they kind of
Mhm.
walk by and the carpet follows them and, to your point, pantomimes them. But he's a good guy. He's like, hey, I'll help you find the thing you're looking for. He also tries to stop Abu from stealing because he
Mhm.
knows. I'm assuming as a resident of the Cave of Wonders, he knows what's the
What
consequence.
yeah.
So he's on Team Aladdin.
Mhm.
He helps. They're literally riding him to safety, but they do not make it
Mhm.
out.
Right.
They get to the end. He's dangling from the open mouth, which you're assuming this whole cave is like very far underground. And
Mhm.
the old man, who is Jafar, grabs a lamp and lets him fall into the
Mhm.
imploding cave.
Mhm.
So now they're by themselves. The three of them, I guess, they're not by themselves, but there's, they didn't make it out, and Aladdin's all like, "Oh, all for nothing. Woe is me."
Mhm.
And Sticky Fingers Abu is like, "Well, remember I wasn't supposed to take anything. I ended up taking this lamp somehow, anyways, from the
Mhm.
old man." And they rub the lamp as one does, and poof, here
Mhm.
comes Robin Williams. I mean, the genie.
Yeah.
It's just Robin Williams who's
It's
blue.
just
That's all it
Robin
is.
Williams,
That's a
yeah.
blue Williams.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I feel like this is everyone's favorite part of the movie where we get to just see Robin Williams showing off all his different voices and,
Oh yeah,
um, sings his big song.
I love this song. This is such a
Mhm.
good song.
Mhm. So he sings, uh, "Friend Like Me," which I feel like aside from maybe "A Whole New World" is, like, the big song from Aladdin. Uh,
Yeah,
Where he's explaining to Aladdin all the things he can do as a genie.
Yeah, and the song's good. And if I'm not mistaken, Williams sings it.
I think, yeah.
Sounds like him.
Mhm.
Um, which most of these movies you have a voice actor and then a singing actor.
Mhm.
But the I think part of the appeal for me, both as a kid and the multitudes of rewatches, that like he's singing all these silly things, but like you because he's the genie and because he's Rob Williams, you get to see all these different iterations of him, different faces.
Mhm.
He shows off his magic, and there's a bunch of silly things that are happening. It's very fun.
Yeah.
After he friend like me and shows off everything, breaks down the rules. But basically, you can do any wish you want. You can only get three. You cannot wish for more wishes. You cannot kill anybody slash bring them back from the dead or make anybody fall in love with you. Other than that, you can do all this other crazy stuff that he just showed us.
When I was a kid watching this, I always thought the part where he said, "I can't bring anyone back from the dead," and he turns himself into, like, a zombie-looking thing was so scary. Like, I don't know, like, that just creeped me out so bad when I was a
Yeah, it's a
kid,
little creepy.
even though it was, like, very brief. Um, but yeah, I feel like it's hard to watch this and not just assume this is, like, Robin Williams. Like, this is just who he must have been as a person or something. It's so much
I
him
mean,
in
yeah.
the yeah,
If you ever seen him do any interview, it's just like, bro,
that's true.
just calm
Yeah,
down.
fair, yeah.
That's yeah. He also explains that he lives in the lamp for like a millennia, and Aladdin, being the good soul that he is, says he will use his last wish and free the genie. The
Mhm,
genie doesn't believe him, and he makes a promise, and he goes, "Well, we'll see what happens."
mhm,
But at least the fact that he said that kind of caught the genie off guard. Like, oh, that's no one ever. I have these rules for a reason because everyone wants to make people fall in love with them, kill people, or
mhm,
wish for more wishes. And no, everyone's basically greedy, and you're gonna just give one away to free me.
mhm.
Diamond in the rough.
Jesus. I like you really sounded like the Cave of Wonders there with the whisper.
Oh, I didn't even practice or nothing.
So basically, Aladdin tricks the genie into getting them out of the cave.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot about that part. Um, so even though the genie just showed him a bunch of crazy stuff during his song and dance, Aladdin kind of uses reverse psychology. Like, are you that strong though? Like, you can't even bring anybody back from the dead. Which, to be fair, Genie never said he couldn't. He just said he wouldn't.
Mhm,
Um, and he's all like, kind of questioning the genie's power, and like, you probably can't even get us out of this cave that we're trapped in. And he's like, oh, I'll show you. And he gets him out, and they fly away to like this little tropical oasis. And he's like, all right, cool. What's for your next wish? He goes, I didn't wish for shit. He's like, what? He's like, you did that on your own, big dog. And the genie's like, literally his jaw drops, because
mhm,
of course it does. And he's like, all right, good on you, you got me, but that's not happening again.
mhm.
And that's going to be important later on.
Yeah.
So while that's happening, we're back at the palace. Jafar, as Rachel said, is hypnotizing the Sultan with his little snake staff, basically to get the Sultan to do whatever he wants. In this scenario, I believe him and Iago are like chit chatting about what are we gonna do. Eventually, like we can't control the Sultan. Will be a new Sultan because Jasmine needs to marry somebody,
Mhm.
and Iago kind of gets in his ear, literally and figuratively, that why don't you marry the princess? Like, why don't we not thought about the instead of trying to get someone else to control, we just take over.
Mhm.
And like, oh, well, shit, why not? And as he's like hypnotizing the Sultan, it kind of shows that it's not always all powerful because
Mhm.
he's talking about how like I will marry the princess, and he in his like trans voice is like you will marry the princess, and then he like kind of cuts out of it for a second. He's like, but you're so old,
No. This
and
is
ouch, man, what the fuck?
yeah. This is a line that I still think about whenever, if I'm joking with friends or with my husband about like, "Wow, I feel old," I'll hear this line in my head, "But you're so old."
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And now we are.
and now we are. Also really like when Jafar and Iago are talking about marrying Jasmine, and they're calling the Sultan the chump, and they're like, "And I'll marry his chump daughter."
There's also kind of this hatred Iago has for the Sultan because the Sultan is just treating Iago like a regular parrot. And he's always
Mhm.
kind of, feeding Polly a cracker, so to speak. And Iago's always like trying to shy away, like, I don't want this cracker. And the Sultan shoves it in his mouth. And all Iago wants is Jafar to get in power so he could force feed crackers to the Sultan. And
Yeah.
I just love that's his like
That's
motivation.
his one thing, yeah.
Yeah. And he brings it up a lot, and he calls him a chump all the time, and it's
Mhm.
pretty funny. Gilbert Godfrey does a really good evil parrot, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah.
Before anything go further with him hypnotizing them, they hear a ruckus and they go to check it out, and it is Prince Ali. So go back on the island. He uses his first wish to be a prince. He
Mhm.
mentions to the genie that there's this girl, and he's like, no, 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 I gave you the rules. Like, no, 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 okay, I don't want you to make anyone fall in love, but I need to be on a common playing field with a princess. So he wishes to become a prince. And in genie fashion, he enters Agrabah with a chorus, literally, of people singing how awesome he is, and the genie's doing all these funny things. This is also
Yes.
one of my favorite songs. Like, I think
Mhm.
probably 1B to Friend and Me was my 1A, because I think this one
Mhm.
sticks in my head more. I just, the tagline, the Prince Ali, just over and over again. Um,
Mhm.
but also, it's Rob Williams doing like 1,000 voices. I love the
Mhm.
part is where like, so he's coming into town. They made Abu into an elephant, and he's riding the elephant into town. He's like passing out
Mhm.
gold to everybody. There's all these treasures and exotic animals, and the genie pops up, and he's like commentators for the Macy's Day Parade. And
Yeah.
I always
That's
love
my
it. Even as a
favorite.
kid, it's so funny to me. I don't know why.
Mhm.
It's clearly just we see what's happening. It does look like a giant parade, and I feel like a lot of these things the animators had to literally draw in because Rob Williams would just go and go, and they're like, okay, stop. We can't draw all this stuff. There's probably hours of outtakes of this guy.
Yeah. That's probably
Um,
true. No, I was just gonna say I love the energy of this whole part. Like it's just very chaotic and more things keep popping up. It's all the entertainers and animals and things that Prince Ali has, but then also all these little jokes keep popping up too, like the parade commentators. It's like chaos, but fun chaos.
yeah, Genie disguised himself as a very busty lady, and she's like telling all the other women how awesome the prince is, and just like little things like that. It kind of reminds me if the song 12 Days of Christmas, if you got all those gifts at once and paraded them down the street, because there's just constant all these weird things.
Mhm.
Um, but Jasmine's overlooking it, and she is not impressed.
Of course.
She does not care about all the riches in the world
Mhm.
because she doesn't know that they can buy apples, apparently.
Right, because she doesn't know you need money to buy things.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like more importantly for the film, at least, she doesn't like all these princes coming in and like
Mhm.
peacocking.
Yes, fair.
Yeah, she is not impressed.
Yeah. Well, because she has to know too that none of these princes even know her. They just wanna marry a princess, right? It could be any princess probably.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a good point too. Yeah,
but Prince Ali is different. But we
yeah,
know that. She
we
doesn't
know
know
that.
quite yet. Mhm.
Well, no, not yet. And he literally barges into the palace, squishing Jafar and Iago behind the
Mhm.
door,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
wins over the Sultan because
Mhm.
Aladdin is a good guy, and he's very respectful to
Mhm.
his potential wife's
Mhm.
father.
Mhm.
He's enamored with him right away. Jasmine is not. Thinks he's just got a bunch of steam that he's blowing
Mhm.
off and showing off. And at one point, the three of them, including Jafar, Sultan, and Aladdin, arguing about who is better to be married to Jasmine, and
Mhm.
she overhears it, and she's like, "Who are any of you to say I who I
Yeah.
got married?" And as a kid, I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then as an adult, I'm like, "Hell yeah!"
Yes.
It hit the same, but I think harder maybe as an adult.
Yep.
But yeah, she's not having it and storms off, which good for her.
Mhm. This is probably why, as a kid, I thought she was such, like, an independent kind of princess character.
Hmm.
These little points.
Yeah,
Mostly where she's, like, fighting with the men in her life.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Um, so now Aladdin's just beating himself up all over again. He's, "Oh, I blew it, blah blah blah. She'll never marry
Mhm.
me, even though I'm a prince." And the genie is trying to convince Aladdin to just be himself. He's like, "Oh, I can't be myself," and he's missing the fact that you can still pretend to be a prince, to otherwise you won't be able to get her attention.
Mhm.
But don't act like an asshole. Like, be you in different clothes.
Mhm.
He doesn't seem to get that. Then eventually, with the help of Carpet, um, like impresses her because he's got this magic carpet and he's kind of being more honest now that he's not trying to impress her. He
Mhm.
tries to tell him that is not this is not who he really is, but he doesn't
Mhm.
want to say he's not a prince. And she starts to realize she might know him.
Mhm.
Um, and as an adult, I was like, of course, because he didn't do anything. Once he takes his stupid hat off, like he looks exactly like it's not like
Yeah.
he's wearing a costume. I mean, a mask, I should say. He's not wearing anything
Mhm.
like you guys just met like an hour ago.
Yeah. I always thought that was weird too, how she didn't, like, immediately recognize him because it's not like his face changed.
Right.
But you are, I feel like, skipping very important part of this movie.
No, not
There
yet.
Okay.
He's convincing her.
Okay, okay.
It's we're almost there. I know you're chomping at the bit. He asks if she trusts him,
Mhm.
and she does because she's making those connections. Because also, when they were escaping the guards in the beginning, before she revealed she was a princess, he asked her the same thing: "Do
Mhm.
you trust me?" And she's like, "Oh, wait a minute." And they get on the magic carpet
Mhm.
and they have a nice romantic song.
Yeah. So Aladdin and Jasmine go on this magic carpet ride. They sing A Whole New World. It is every little girl's favorite part of Aladdin. I would do Disney karaoke with my friends and we would sing A Whole New World.
Nice. Didn't it get nominated for Oscars for like best original score or song?
It's possible.
I know it was a real big deal though, not just for the movie, but
Mhm,
like
like a
it
hit
was.
song.
Yeah, it was a hit song outside of this movie.
It won an Academy Award
Hell yeah!
and 2 Grammys. There's always that big romantic moment, right? I mean, less so I feel in Hercules.
The second he drops her off at the palace, Jafar somehow realizes who Aladdin is before Jasmine does, and they arrest him. The important part is they arrest him without the lamp, so he's genie-less. The monkey, who is now an elephant, is caged, and I think they're got a overweight guard sitting on carpet or something silly like that. I can't remember.
Mhm,
Um, but they movie is kind of dark. They do talk about murder a lot in this movie, and they're getting rid of Aladdin, and it's like mafia style. They chain him to a boulder. Well, first they knock
mhm,
him out with like a blackjack or something, and they chain him
mhm,
to a boulder and throw him off a cliff into the water.
uh-huh.
Like, there's no cutting off a head of a mythological beast with green blood, but this is pretty brutal. Like,
Yeah, I could see that, mhm, even without any blood or gore, yes.
yeah, it's watching as an adult. I'm like, damn, they did that.
Mhm,
Um, Oh, I lied though. He does have the lamp. He just can't access it himself to get the genie to help him. But he's
mhm.
unconscious and there's underwater. The
Wasn't
lamp,
the lamp was under his hat?
yeah, something like
Something,
that.
okay.
The lamp falls out of his pocket though while he's underwater because he's struggling to swim
Mhm,
up. and he cannot because he is chained to a boulder, and eventually
Mhm.
starts drowning and like falls to the bottom of the sea, and that's where the lamp
Mhm.
rolls out,
Mhm.
and it just so happens to nudge against his cuffed hands, and the genie comes
Mhm.
out. Oddly enough, he was taking a shower. Um,
Oddly enough, genies need showers.
right. Sees that Al is quite literally dying, but he says to an barely conscious Aladdin that I can't save you unless you wish for it. Do you wish
Mhm.
for me to get you out of, or whatever, how he
Of
words
this
it? And
situation, yeah.
yeah, and his just like floating head kind of like bobs. Yes, he's like, I'm taking that as
Mhm.
an answer, and he saves him.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, so it's unfortunate because at this point, Al and Genie are, becoming friends, not just
Mhm.
a lack of a better term, and mostly because they use this in the movie a lot, which is I put in my notes like, oh, that was it hits different as an adult, but a slave and master situation.
Yeah.
They
It
refer
does
to,
hit different.
yeah, the genie is called that mostly by
Mhm.
Jafar. That
Mhm.
he's Jafar's slave. Spoiler:
Mhm.
Jafar grabs the lamp here in a second. Um, but yeah, he's living by his rules, which is all the genies have, and he's like, I can't save you. You already got one over on me. So
Yeah.
there goes a second wish. Aladdin is one wish left,
Mhm.
which is
Which
already has been promised.
right, which he promised to free the genie with.
Right. So they go back to the palace, and Jafar is surprised. He's like, "How?" Because he doesn't know about the genie thing. He just knows that Aladdin is not Prince Ali. He doesn't know why or how. They, Aladdin and Genie get into a fight because Genie's like, "Hey, man, you got your last wish. You're gonna free me." He's like, "I can't because I still need to be a prince."
Mhm.
Now, as a kid, I'm like, "Oh, boo! Like you're breaking Robin Williams' heart."
Yeah.
As an adult, I was like, "He didn't say he wouldn't. He just he can't do it yet."
Mhm.
Like he's like, "Hell, let's lock this in. I still need to woo Jasmine." And meanwhile, Genie's also saying, "You don't need to be a prince. You need to be you." So they're like, kind of
Mhm.
fighting on two different fronts here.
Mhm.
And the genie storms off into his lamp, and something happens, and Aladdin has to leave, and Iago steals the lamp
Yeah,
for.
well, I think Iago calls Aladdin out pretending to be Princess Jasmine,
Yeah,
right? When he
that's right.
pretends to be a flamingo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And yeah,
Mhm.
then I think that's when it's in his hat, and he steals it
Mhm.
because he leaves his hat in
Mhm.
the palace or whatever, and
Mhm.
now Jafar has the lamp.
Yes. So
Um,
now Jafar controls Genie.
yeah, which always confused me, still confuses me, but maybe I don't know all the genie rules.
Mhm.
Aladdin has his third wish. In my head, and again, this is not fact. It's my point of view. I feel
Mhm.
like the genie can't give anyone other wishes
Until
until
he finishes up.
completes. Yeah,
Mhm.
does that make sense? The rule of
I
three, or am
always
I
thought
crazy?
about that too because it's like an interruption in Aladdin's wishes
Yeah,
because then spoiler alert, at the end, when he goes back to being Aladdin's genie, he's like, "Okay, it's still only one wish left."
yeah,
It doesn't, like, start over. Yeah, I guess I would have thought that, that he would have had to finish Aladdin's 3 wishes before he could have another master, as they
right.
say.
Yeah,
Um, but I guess it's really just whoever rubs the lamp?
that'd be confusing. What if you had like a bunch of people drunk at a party? Like everyone's like touching this lamp, and he's got to like grant like 15 people three wishes, and they all like on top of each other. A wish cancels out another wish. How does that work?
I don't know why he would be in that kind of a situation, though. He
I
lives in an
well,
underground cave.
I'm just saying. I'm just making extreme examples. Like, what if there's like more than just two people? Why? Again, the rule of threes. I assume you have to complete the three wishes to do someone else's three wishes.
Let's not worry about that.
Okay, fair enough. So Jafar has the
It's
lamp.
confusing enough because that Jafar, like, interrupted. We're just not
Right.
gonna entertain other scenarios.
Fair enough.
Mhm.
Um. So with the lamp, what do people with money and power that are evil want? More money, more power. So Jafar wants to, instead of marrying Jasmine, He was just like,
Mhm.
"We're jumping the line. I am now the Sultan." That's his wish to be the Sultan.
Mhm.
Second wish, I forget how he gets coaxed into it, but he wishes to be like the most powerful sorcerer ever,
Mhm.
and he uses his powers to like banish Aladdin to like the North Pole or something. He's in the snow. He's far, far away. Him and Carpet and Abu, I believe. No, Abu's still there as an elephant. Doesn't matter. He just uses the second wish to be a really powerful
No, I think
sorcerer.
Abu is back to being a monkey when he banishes Aladdin. Isn't or is Aladdin
Yeah,
with
I think
carpet?
so.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think
because he has him in his vest. He's like keeping him warm, I think.
Mhm. I
Um,
think, Jafar becomes a sorcerer because he wants the genie to make Jasmine fall in love with him so he can marry her, and he says he
that's right.
can't, which I don't understand why he suddenly needs to marry Jasmine anyway, because wasn't he calling her the chump daughter just a
Right.
little bit ago? Like, who cares if he is already sultan without her? But then I think he wants to be a sorcerer so that he can make Jasmine fall in love with him or something,
That yeah.
maybe.
I maybe he wants Jasmine because he's just really
He's
kind
just
of
evil, and that's what happens.
yeah, he's just evil and he's also like turning the screw again into Aladdin. Like, oh, well, I'm getting everything he's getting everything he thinks Aladdin wanted. And Aladdin doesn't want to be Sultan, but he just
Mhm.
wants to be with Jasmine.
Yeah,
But for good reasons, not evil reasons.
right.
Um,
Um, yes, agreed. So, I actually watching this back, Aladdin just rides the carpet back from, like, the frozen tundra? Is that
yeah, yeah.
okay? Because like, he gets
Luckily,
back really fast.
it's a magic carpet.
Yeah, fair, okay.
I
I
don't
guess
know if
he and
there's
Jasmine made it all the way to, like, China when they were on their date on the carpet, so
right. I don't
okay.
know how fast the carpet flies, but apparently it's fast.
I mean, it must be.
Not fast enough to get out of the cave of wonders, apparently, but
Yeah, that's a good point. Hmm, interesting. Okay,
yeah,
whatever.
whatever. So back at the palace, they are fighting the sorcerer. Turns into a snake. He's puts Jasmine in an hourglass. So now he's not trying to marry her anymore. He's trying to bury her in evil red sand or something. He's like doing all these crazy things to all the characters, the heroes,
Mhm,
and um, good old reverse psychology comes back into play. And the clever Aladdin is saying that no matter how powerful Jafar is as a sorcerer, he'll never be as powerful as a genie. And
mhm.
everyone's like, "Shut the fuck up, Aladdin! Like we don't
We
need
don't
this
need more.
madman. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
need more power for this madman. He's already turning into a snake for God's sakes."
Mhm,
And he's like, "Oh shit, you're right." And again, more power. He's hungry for more power.
mhm,
So he's like, good call, bro. Thanks. When I'm a genie, I'll probably kill you." And so he uses his
mhm.
third and final wish to be a genie, and he looks like a badass, very scary genie. And he's got this badass, scary looking black lamp, black as his
Mhm.
soul, apparently.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
gotta drive home that point that he's evil.
right. Like, even the genie like gets surprised. Not only does he wish for Jafar to be a genie, but the result is he gets trapped in the lamp. He becomes a genie, and he can't come out until someone needs a genie.
Mhm.
And so all the bad stuff that Jafar was doing gets undone and all go into the lamp. At the very last second, he pulls his friend Iago in with him.
Yep. I did like that little bit where Iago's trying to be like, "Well, I don't need to be a part of this."
Yeah, bail, bail.
Yep.
Um, everything's back to normal. And finally, Aladdin does use his wish to free the genie.
Mhm.
And then
And
he
also
goes to,
because he is such a good person and frees the genie, the Sultan changes the law.
oh, yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes. He's like, well, well, pretty much, yeah, because Jasmine's in love with him for who he is. And so he's like, well, I'm the Sultan. You don't have to marry a prince. You can marry whoever you want.
Mhm.
Also, he's a good guy.
Mhm.
And the genie goes to like Disney World because he's wearing a goofy hat or something like that.
Oh, yeah, we didn't point out 'cause there is that reference to Disney World in Aladdin, but then there's a reference to cute theme park characters in Hercules when Pain and Panic are pretending to be, I don't like, very big-eyed woodland creatures, like, really cutesy woodland creatures looking like they're out of Bambi or something.
Yeah, isn't that when they were trying to trick Hercules up the hill to fight Hydra?
I think they were kids for
Oh
the
yeah.
Hydra. I don't they were woodland creatures when they run into Meg, and she makes a crack like, "Oh, look,
Oh
some
yeah.
theme park creatures," or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember now. Yeah.
Mhm.
Again, the animators having fun at their jobs,
Right.
bringing it all back.
Mhm. Uh,
And that's it. They free the genie. He's happy. Um,
he's happy he's going to Disney World?
Going to Disney World. He's taking a much needed vacation. They do take Jafar's lamp, and Genie like flicks it, presumably in the Cave of Wonders. It goes very very far, and there's like thunder and lightning when it
Mhm.
lands. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I remember being a kid going, "God, can we just like hold on to it and protect it so no one finds it?" Like, I know we're presuming that it's going to be impossible to find. Is there a
Mhm.
second diamond in the rough? By the way,
Right.
there's a whole trilogy of Aladdin movies. The next one is called Return of Jafar. So guess what? Someone finds the damn lamp.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I haven't seen that one in a very long time. That one was okay. The genie is not Robin Williams, and it was not met
Yeah.
with positive reviews from fans because of the lack of Robin Williams. So then they made the third movie, and it was just always announced as like the return of Robin Williams. Like it's
Oh, I remember.
such a big deal that he was the
Mhm.
genie.
Yep.
No offense to who was ever the genie in the second movie. And I
Yep.
apologize for not knowing your name. We're not talking about you at the moment. Anyway, but Robin Williams is the genie. End of story. Um, but back to the ending, the street vendor. As a kid, and I still am not convinced otherwise, an adult, was the character voiced by Robin Williams, who was not the genie. Sometimes I wonder if it was the genie in disguise. How he always does these different disguises and voices anyway. Could it
Oh,
be the genie telling us a story about his buddy Aladdin?
yeah, sure.
I mean, he's free now. He can do whatever he wants, and he still has his powers.
Mhm. That's true. Why not? Because he doesn't he make that little joke at the end where he's like, "Made you look," but is he as the genie or is he as the street vendor?
Right.
So my little voice actor aside that I would like to point out is that Aladdin was voiced by, I don't know his name, but the actor who played Steve on Full House,
Hmm.
DJ's boyfriend on Full House, which at the time was a very big deal.
Yeah. When I was little, I actually did know that because I watched a lot of Full House.
But it was just funny to me that both of these movies had, like, at the time, notable voice actors for the leads.
Hmm.
And also, as we're saying this now too, you mentioned that Aladdin for you as a little boy was less of like a princess movie. That's kind of what Hercules was too, you could argue.
Yeah.
So, because there's not even really a princess at all in Hercules. So, did the
I,
movie hold up for you?
yes. I was watching it with much joy and anticipation for what I know is coming next. I was probably taking notes and singing along, which isn't
Mhm.
something I normally do during Disney movies, but I
Yeah.
mean, two of my favorite musical numbers are in this movie. I think I can't remember of all the Disney movies I've seen before, but these two kind of they're up there for me.
Mhm.
And also, I'll say it again, Rob Williams.
Yeah, I think Robin Williams is a big reason why it still holds up for me. I think it still would have been seen as like a generally good Disney movie even without him, but for me that's really what would keep me going back to watch it,
Hmm.
is specifically his performance in it.
And like I mentioned a little bit ago, it's more than just you and I, because they made a second one. It didn't do well. They brought him back specifically as the genie in the third one, and
Mhm.
that one did much better as a sequel. Probably one of the
Mhm.
better Disney sequels that actually were made.
Were those all straight to video though?
Two, I'm pretty sure. Three, I'm not sure. I think they might
Okay.
have went big for the return of Robin Williams, but
Yeah.
I don't think. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure, but I
Mhm.
can see that going either way.
Yeah.
I think the sequels didn't go to theater, but it definitely didn't hurt the purchasing power and rental power of having Robin Williams' name on the front.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, do we have honorable mentions?
Yeah, yeah. Why? I mean, I think we've
We
we kind of
probably
mentioned.
already. Mhm.
Yeah, I think we've talked about most of them in this
Mhm.
decade, but I feel like there's one that flies a little bit under the radar that I'd like to mention. It definitely wasn't one of the big ones, but it came out during this time frame, so it's part of the Renaissance era. It's actually a sequel. It is The Rescuers Down Under. And I remember really liking that as a kid. It's more of the old school classic style animation.
Mhm.
I remember the Golden Eagle it just was great. It was awesome. It was just this big giant bird, hand drawn. I remember being just really enamored with that and Little Mice. I think I saw that movie actually before I knew there was a Rescuers because it came out in a time frame where we saw every Disney movie, like you said, it was a big deal. And then I
Mhm.
had to go back and watch The Rescuers, kind of like your Ghostbusters experience.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
remember watching Rescuers Down Under a lot as a kid. Definitely more so than the first Rescuers. I don't think I went back and saw the first one for a while, but I personally didn't think of that as being part of the Renaissance.
believe doesn't have all the singing and dancing. It
Mhm.
just I think they were working on it before, and it just was released in this time frame. So it's not one of the first movies people think about when it comes to this era, so to speak. But I wanted to give it a shout out because even with the technicality or not, I thought it was a really good movie, and I watched
Mhm.
a lot as a kid.
Mhm. So my initial thought for this episode was The Emperor's New Groove, but I don't think that technically falls into the Renaissance period. I think it might be just outside it.
I think it's just outside it.
Yeah. So that's why I didn't go with that. Beauty
I
and the Beast
think.
also would have been up there for me. Belle was always my favorite princess because she liked to read. And
Yep, makes sense.
and at least for me, growing up, I always felt like princesses were always blonde, and she was like the first princess that had dark hair like I did. Like not counting Ariel, because obviously Ariel was not blonde. But I feel like the classic princesses, like when you're thinking of like Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, they were blonde. And I as a kid, I could never find like baby dolls that had dark hair. They were always blonde dolls. And so Belle had a special place in my heart because she had dark hair. And also because she loved to be in the bookstore or the library or whatever. And that would have been me. I would have been like, I don't need to marry Gaston. I just want to like read all the books.
Yeah. Can
So,
he? Gaston looks strong. Can he bring me more books?
mhm,
Yeah.
that's all you need him for.
I just want to be fact check here. I don't want to
Mhm.
bust your brunette theory, but Snow White,
No,
like
I
right.
understand that, but she had black hair.
Oh, you're specifically mean brown, not brunette versus blonde. I apologize. I
I had a thing
misunderstood.
growing up where I felt like popular characters never had brown hair. They were mostly blonde. But
Okay.
then when they did have dark hair, it was like Snow White, Jasmine, and Belle. Like those
Hmm.
are the only ones I could really think of.
Yeah. Lion King would have been a good one as well.
Mulan is also up there for me
Oh
too.
yeah, that's a good one.
Mulan has a lot of really good songs.
Oh
Now
yeah.
that we're mentioning it, like literally, let's get down to business to defeat the Huns is in my head. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on our movie picks as well as your own favorite Disney Renaissance movies. You can find us on Instagram at Back Through the Lens Pod and on Facebook at Back Through the Lens. You can also email us at backthroughthelenspodcast@gmail.com. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. It's the best way to support our show.
If you enjoyed our show today, please give us a like and follow for updates on new and future episodes. Our show is produced by our hosts, Rachel Campbell and myself, Joe Siomek, with additional help and support from Peter Tellup of LPV Productions. Rachel, Peter, and I are also the executive producers. Our awesome logo is brought to you by Tom Fracci, and our wonderful theme song is by Matt Tarek. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more trips into our movie watching past on Back Through the Lens. Perfect.
All right. Bye.
Bye.